the theory of relativity by merging time into space. So space is 3 dimensions. And time is merged into it as a 4th dimension. By merging space-time, has damaged the traditional notion of substance. Okay. How so? How and why? That's the question. Mr. Russell says that more than the arguments of all the philosophers in our time who have railed against the conception of substance, I mean, for Russell, for Hume, Berkeley, and others, but these are the one who come to mind in the Lockean tradition anyway. Okay, how so damage the notion of substance more than all the arguments of the philosopher? Okay, now here's the problem with this quotation. Matter. So from substance it goes to matter. So that's not clear. Matter as such is substance. Because for Aristotle, for example, matter is an abstraction in a sense. So, but matter for us is always with form, some sort of form. So chair, we have chair which is made up of matter, but it's not matter as form as well. And wood is matter obviously, but it's not just matter, it's form as well. So pure matter is an abstraction. That's the first problem. And so he makes a claims about matter, substance, but then goes on to substitute matter for substance, but substance and matter are not the same thing in this context. That's the first problem with this quotation. Now, second problem with this quotation is that it starts with the theory of relativity by merging time into space has damaged the traditional notion of substance. More traditional, by which I mean by which I understand, broadly Aristotelian, Lockean, Cartesian conception of matter, which I just described in a very layman term. But traditional notion of substance is not common sense. So that's another jump in the argument. The first jump is from substance to matter. They are not the same things. And traditional notion of substance to common sense, they are not the same thing. That's the second problem with this argument. So matter for common sense is something which persists in time and moves in it. Persists in time. Moves in space. Not matter. For example, a matter for Aristotle, for example, matter is an abstraction. It can't move as such. And matter only moves because it acquires form. And that's because matter is potentiality, in a way. Potentiality to acquire form. And that's how this potentiality can become actuality. But that's why there's a movement. Because matter as an abstraction from all forms is a potentiality, pure potentiality. And when any mover moves it and gives it form, it becomes actual. And the movement is because of the gap between potentiality and actuality. And not because something which persists in time and moves in space. Because time in this context is different theoretical function than the function of time or space-time in Einstein theory. Okay, so this is the third point. The fourth point is, what does he say? He says that matter for common sense is something which persists in time and moves in space. Okay, but for modern relativity physics, this view is no longer tenable. Why? Even before we consider that question or reason for that, what we need to understand is the relationship between metaphysics and physics. Physics, generally speaking, can exclude certain metaphysical conceptions, certain ultimate explanation of reality, but it doesn't determine or over-determine metaphysical conception, because our understanding of our physical explanations are never exhaustive. There's always a gap. That's why you can have a relativity physics and Einstein, Newton's physics still working side by side, because at the end of the day, they are theoretical, or as a whole, they are theoretical explanation. And those theoretical explanations are compatible with the variety of views about reality as a whole. So to think that any physical theory will deterministically determine our metaphysics or our notion of ultimate reality doesn't seem correct, seems too simplistic. So that's why this claim should be taken, the claim that for modern relativity physics this view is no longer tenable. This claim, see, it might be that for modern relativity physics it's no longer tenable, but that doesn't mean that that view is not tenable in itself, because among other things, relativity physics is compatible with many, not all, obviously, ultimate explanation of reality. And on the other hand, relativity physics is only one level of explanation. And the third thing is relativity physics has been superseded by other conception of physics, from quantum physics to string theory and whatnot. And basically, physics is just a mathematical construction these days at the level of general explanation. So the sixth point or fifth, I forgot which one was it, but a piece of matter has become not a persistent thing, with varying states. But a system of interrelated events. So there are many things we can say about this, but firstly, let's talk about matter. But it started with substance, so that's the basic flaw in the argument. So it's not about matter. Even matter which goes through varying states, there's something which persists. Otherwise, that's the argument, not that matter persists as a whole. Something which persists. Otherwise, we can't conceive at the conceptual level. We can't conceive change in the first place. That's the argument. And that something is called substance, not matter as such. That's the 6A. Okay, and 6B is that whether we are talking about matter or events system, of whether we are talking about chair or atoms. These are different levels of explanation. That doesn't nullify the basic concept that you can't. I'm not saying it can't be nullified with some other argument, but with this argument, it can't be nullified that in order to conceive change, we must have something which changes. If everything is changes at once, the change is hard to understand the meaning of change. That's okay. Maybe at mathematical level, but from a logical level, it doesn't seem very plausible. Okay, the whole solidity has gone. Yeah, solidity has gone, but solidity of firstly, solidity is still there. Like for a chair is solid. It depends on the level of explanation. Which level solidity is still there? That's the first point, and on which level it is gone. After all, the E is equal to mc squared. So matter and energy are interchangeable in that sense. But that doesn't mean that chair doesn't have any solidity. That's the first point. The second thing is solidity might be related to matter, but matter as such is not a substance. Substance is a category which the basic intuition behind that is you can't understand change without having something which changes. And if everything changes at once, then there can't be any conception of change. Maybe this argument is flawed, but that has to be dealt with at a different level than Mr. Russell is doing at this, if this is Mr. Russell's whole quote. Anyway, but obviously we are not concerned with Mr. Russell, we are concerned with Mr. Iqbal. So the old solid gone, and it is the crux that to the materials made matter seem more real than fleeting thoughts. So this is the argument against so-called materialism, not against substance as such. Because after all, you have in Descartes, matter is a substance for him, in his sense, which is pure extension, and mind is a substance as well. So that has nothing to do with substance. So you can be materialist or idealist and can still believe in substance at a certain level of explanation. Okay, so I think we have covered Mr. Russell's argument, and that doesn't seem terrible. So next time, inshallah, let's go back to the text. Let's read what we have covered today. So Mr. Russell says that the theory of relativity by merging into space-time has damaged the traditional notion of substance. That it starts with substance, but then all the arguments of the philosophers, but even matter. If this is actually Russell's quote, so I haven't checked it, but according to this, it seems it is. But anyway, if it's not Russell's quote and it's Iqbal's interpretation of what Russell is saying, then Iqbal's rendition is fallacious at certain level. So he's talking about substance and then goes on matter to give the impression that substance and matter are the same thing. And so what applies to matter also applies to substance, but that's not right. So okay, so matter for common sense, and it's talking about common sense, not philosophy. So traditional concept of substance is not necessarily the same as, although it does drive upon common sense intuition, but you can't equate them, I think. So matter for common sense is something which persists in time and moves in space. But I said that traditional notion of substance, the basic, I think there are two basic intuition behind the traditional